This message was placed on my spirit specifically for women who are practicing any sort of magical work, who are also mothers of boys. This can apply to the girls too, but it was especially on me to talk to the moms of boys. I am a fellow boy mom, so I think that that's probably why this also resonates so much. If you're practicing any sort of magical work, any sort of spiritual work, conjure, root work, spell work, whatever you want to classify it as, one thing I really want to encourage you to do is to keep a strong hedge of protection over your boys. Again, this can apply for the girls, but there is a different type of protection that I personally believe that young boys need over our young girls. So I'm only talking about the boys right now. There is a very strong spirit that is taking place right now, and this spirit is not for the benefit of our boys, especially Black boys. And it is one that we have been dealing with for a long time. Our mothers and our mothers' mothers have been dealing with this particular spirit. Some of them knew what to do and they knew how to do it, and others succumbed to the spirit. Others ignored it and acted like it did not exist. That is the reason why we have so many Black men that are in prison right now. So many Black men that have passed at such a young age, or even unaliving themselves at such a young age. And it is because we ignored that this is even happening. And the spirit that I am referring to, it isn't just one, it's various. But because you are a magical goddess, because you have drawn back to your original rights, to your original power, you can do something about it. Especially if you have young boys, if your children are still minors living underneath your roof, they are still guided by your protection and your direction. I want you to remember that all the money magic in the world is beautiful. The glamour magic, it is beautiful. The protection spells is beautiful. You know, getting good luck or getting things happening for you, men spending on you, men being attracted to you, all of that, anything that you want, a career, all of those workings are beautiful. Please don't forget your sons though. Don't forget to create conjure for your sons on their behalves. Don't forget to explain certain things to them at, of course, appropriate ages, you know, energetically, spiritually mature ages, but make sure that you are incorporating them in your root work. The earlier that you start with them, the much better they will be as they start to trail through this life and they carry their experiences. One way that I want to encourage women is to provide protection for their boys is to unlearn the belief system that women are not capable of raising boys into men. That is something, especially in the Black community, I believe we have been pushed to believe. It has been shoved down our throats that, you know, you can raise him to be a good person, but you can't raise him to be a man. And you have to have a man go in there and do that type of work. And this is just my personal opinion. But this is where I would disagree, because I myself know of many women who have raised boys, and these boys became men, and they're great. These are some great masculine, divine masculine men. And there were no men around to come in at that, you know, prime age to show them the way. There weren't any good, sound men to, you know, take them underneath their wings. So I just know from personal experience that it is fully possible for a woman to be able to do that. Now, if you are ever blessed to be in a situation where you can have a divine masculine man, a healthy masculine man to come in and, you know, participate in that with you, don't take that for granted. Don't shun that away, especially if you, let's say, are like a single mother and now you're out dating again and things like that. You want to be extremely intentional about the men that you keep around your sons, not just from the physical aspect of, you know, exposing him to different things, or, you know, we don't want him to be harmed in those ways. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You can read between the lines. You also want to look at this from a spiritual and energetic perspective. That's why it is so important for you to understand the history of the men that you are bringing around your sons to the best of your knowledge. And you are a woman, so you can finesse. You can use your charm to find these things out. I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about teachers, talking about siblings, like cousins rather, uncles, in-laws, stepdads, all of them. It is important that you make sure that you understand where they are spiritually, energetically, and you also want to get as much information as you can as it pertains to their own bloodline. Do not procreate with dirty DNA. Do not procreate with dirty DNA. If there are ancestral wounds and trauma that has taken place and it's still very much so prevalent in their current lives, that is not a man that you want to procreate with, because what you're doing, and you may not realize that you're doing it, but what you are doing is you are recreating that. You are allowing for the trauma to continue. You are just the vessel that trauma is going to basically be utilized to continue to manifest through. And I am saying this from experience and not from judgment. I personally made that mistake. There was a lot of things that I had to unlearn and redo in order to get myself back to a state of healing, but then also to get my child back to a state of healing, because the partner that I chose when I got married to the first one was a really big problem that I did not recognize and I did not see until after I had already, gotten pregnant. And I was not spiritually in tune. I wasn't spiritually mature. I certainly wasn't down this path at the time when that happened. So even if you are someone who feels like, okay, well, I did make that mistake. I did get pregnant by dirty DNA, or I did, find myself allowing my son around men who are not good energetically or spiritually. It's okay. You can reverse that. You can switch that up. It does not have to be his story, especially because you have now tapped back into your spiritual power. My encouragement to you is to utilize the spiritual power to heal your own bloodline and legacy. Legacy is not just reserved for men. Honestly, legacy is more important for women, in my opinion, because we are the ones that are giving birth. It's patriarchy that has convinced us that it's the man's last name that matters. But you are the one that even gets to determine if his last name continues or not. That is how powerful you are. But that's a whole nother tangent, so let me get back to focus. If you have sons, ways that I want to encourage you to protect your sons. First, you can absolutely use your spell works. Any protection spells that you are doing over yourself, it should be safe enough to do over your child. Now, if you are trying to unbreak a curse or a hex or something like that, then I would not use that same type of conjure unless my spirit guide, my ancestors have instructed me to do that. So this is where divination is going to be very important, because children are pure, children are innocent, but children are also vulnerable. And that's why it's important for not only you to be mindful of who you have around your child, but you also want to be mindful of just what type of energy you are exposing to your child, right? Or children. So with that being said, if you are going to do any sort of protection spell works or anything like that, I would certainly consult with whoever you deem your spiritual higher power to be, and make sure that you got that clearance. I would do ancestor divination. I would meditate and pray on it. I'm going to ask for those clear confirmations. So for my child, for example, and I'm not going to personally go into the specific protection spell that I use, but I can tell you that it's a simple one. I can tell you that, especially for my children, it is one that I've created to be a ritual for them. They know the routine now. They know what they need to do. And I explained it to them in a way that was simple for them to understand. I didn't go all into the intricacies. I didn't get esoteric with them because they're younger. But if you have babies, especially, I really want to encourage you to find the protection spell that you feel called to do for them and make sure that you do it. It could be something just as simple as praying over them. That is also protection work. Reading the book of Psalms. Psalm 91, that is a very popular protection work spell. So reading that over your babies, cleansing their rooms, cleansing their clothes, things like that. One friend of mine used to have a black obsidian stone in her son's book bag. So every day he was carrying that bag, and he didn't even know that he was carrying that stone. It was a little small piece, but that was her way of ensuring that there was protection over her son. So protection spells or any sort of crystal work, those are great ways for you to be able to protect your son. The next way that I want to encourage you to protect your son, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about before in terms of the men that he has around him, babe, I need you to do some womb cleansing. I need you to do some womb healing. The reason that this is going to benefit him is because your womb, if it is not cleansed, it is going to attract and pull in that same energy that was no good. So if you have a pattern or a history of dealing with men that were no good, that were toxic or chaotic, any of that type of stuff, especially if you have a parent who was a narcissist or who was toxic themselves. And again, I'm saying this from experience, not from judgment. My father was a narcissist. I went around and married a duplication of my father. My next relationship was also a duplication of my father. That continued until I really did the cleansing, until I really started doing the healing work. And I'm not saying you just do a yoni steam and then that's it, you're done. Depending on the level of trauma that you are holding in your womb, that is going to be the determination of how much cleansing work you need to do. But anything that you're holding on to still, that you're harboring, any of that anger, that resentment, even the hope or the wish that that man would do better and be better, you are holding on to that. That is energetically being transferred over to your son. And that is the reason why a lot of times we will hear people say like, oh, he's a mama's boy, or, he's married to his mother. Most of the time, the reason why these boys become mama's boys, and I say that in a negative way because I have a different opinion of that, which I'll get to. But a lot of times the reason why these boys are being labeled as mama's boys is because the mother is putting her son in the position of husband, in the position of protector and provider, in lieu of the man that she wished would have been her husband or would have been her protector and her provider. Instead, what I would encourage you to do is put him in a position of being protector and provider for a divine feminine counterpart for him. You're not his divine feminine counterpart. You were here to be the matriarch. You were here to be his maternal guidance and protector and nurturer. Boys, sons are the only ones that require nurturing. Once he becomes a grown man, in my opinion, you should not be, quote, nurturing him anymore. His wife also should not be your girlfriend, should also not be nurturing him because he got that as a child. When he enters into manhood, that's when it's time to step up and to show up, to be the protector, to be the provider, to be the mover, the doer, the hunter. But in order for him to do that, he does need proper nurturing as a child. He does need the proper guidance and the proper influence as a child. So you have to be careful about making sure that you're not putting him in position to just be the interim or to be the replacement to the man that you wish was there. So that's why it's going to be really important for you to make sure that you are doing your own cleansing and your own healing over any of these previous relationships that you have done. That is going to protect your child. And that's also going to make sure that he is prepared for what his position is going to be in another woman's life as he gets older. The only reason why women are out here still not willing to give their sons up when they become men, or they only want to call their son to come and rescue them when they son got a whole family at home that he's supposed to be taking care of, it is because she didn't do her part, because she didn't tap into her goddess energy. She didn't go in to heal herself, to adorn herself, to give herself self-respect, and then attract a divine counterpart for herself. So instead, what she did was look to her son to be the replacement. That is not going to protect him when it's time to deal with the Andrew Tates of the world, when it's time to deal with the men that are out here telling these other younger men that they should be harming women, that they should be, trying to figure out how to get over on women. That's not going to protect them. That's not going to guide them. So it's really important that you make sure that you're healing yourself, you heal your womb. That's going to help to protect your son. And as a side note, one other thing that really does do is that contributes to honoring the divine feminine. So I mentioned before in a previous video, honoring the divine feminine is a beautiful way, and it is, in my opinion, the main way that you unlock abundance in your life. When you are teaching your son how to respect women, how to honor women, how to make sure to be that protector, to be that provider, to know what his role is, be proud of that role. When you do that, you are also teaching him the tools on how he can honor the divine feminine. That also is going to amplify his life because he's going to unlock his own abundance. And of course, you're unlocking yours because you're passing down that knowledge on honoring the divine feminine. Let's say, for example, that your son is, getting older. It's time to have the talk about the birds and the bees. In my opinion, if you are a woman who has a man who is a healthy divine masculine man, and when I say healthy divine masculine, let me break that down real quick. Another reason why it's important for you to heal yourself as a woman is because it's going to give you clarity. It's going to really allow for you to see what real health looks like and real divinity looks like. Not anything skewed or rose colored lenses based off of what patriarch has taught you or what you even saw in your family. Because sometimes the masculine that you saw in your family, it may not be healthy divine masculine. That happens all the time where people are willing to put on masks and they will hide behind church. They'll hide behind successful careers. They'll hide behind, I have a wife and kid at home. They'll hide behind all of that and they're really not divine masculine. So, you healing yourself is going to help you gain clarity on what that looks like. So, to me, what healthy divine masculine looks like, it is a man who is in tune with his own sense of spirituality. He is aware of who he is, where he comes from. He understands that any trauma that he has either taken on through ancestral bloodline or that has, attached itself to him throughout his life experiences, he is working actively or has worked on healing those things. He is mature. He is respectable. He is responsible. He understands his duty. He is emotionally regulated. These are just some of the things that I would classify to be a divine, healthy, masculine man. He is not trying to demonize the woman or the feminine. He understands that the feminine is a receiver and that it is his job to give to the feminine. So if those things are happening, in my opinion, we are getting closer and closer to that divine masculine. That is a man that I would absolutely say, yes, babe, please teach my son about the birds and the bees. Please talk to my son about adolescence and about what it is to, start growing and developing as a young man. But let's say you don't have that. Let's say you don't have divine masculine, or you are married to someone, or you had children with someone who can't do that. My son's father cannot do that. So under no circumstance will I ever call him and say, hey, I need you to teach our son about this, this, and this. I will not. Do you know what I will do? I'm going to spirit. I'm going to spirit. Do not underestimate the power of spirit, because spiritual intervention, some people would call it divine intervention, that is a major lifesaver. So what you can do is go to your ancestors. Ask to be tapped into the ancestor that is of a divine masculine energy that can channel through you to talk to your son. I've had to do that. It has worked for me many, many times over, and I'm super thankful for that. If you feel like you don't have that, right? Because I actually have seen that as well, where there have been some women that have felt like, I don't have any divine masculine. I just grew up in a bunch of shit and toxicity. That's okay too. This is where now you tap into the other spirits, okay? You tap into other deities. That is perfectly fine to do that as well. But what you have to start looking at is channeling. From a more practical level, of course, you can start taking into account, other people and, like I said, the coaches, the mentors, the teachers. But you also want to vet them. You want to make sure that they are energetically and spiritually aligned with the direction of how you want to teach your child. I intentionally decided not to include any sort of specific spells or techniques, and that is because I really want to encourage that you go to your own personal spirit team. You go to your ancestors to find out what is going to be best in terms of protecting your child. You know your child. You know your child's personality. You know your ancestral history, your bloodline, your trauma, or you should know. And if you don't, then of course I encourage you to look into that so you know what you're working with, because no spell is a one size fits all. No conjure is a one size fits all. Some children will need more protection than others. In my opinion, any child that is growing up in poverty, any child that is growing up where they're seeing abuse, where they're seeing toxicity, they require a much, much heavier level and layer of protection than someone who is not experiencing those things. If you have been blessed enough to raise your child in, the suburbs or in high class society, then you may not need as much protection, or you may want to just because you feel called to layer up. I live in a very, very nice neighborhood. We would be considered a bit upper class. However, I am layered up when it comes down to protection over my family. So go to your spirit team first. Make sure that you do divination work first before you just start conjuring and, producing spell work over your children. That's going to be very important because children are vulnerable, so they are more susceptible. But it should be some work that you can do every single day to ensure that your sons are being protected. And let me throw this last point out here, especially when it comes down to things like intimacy and the mental. So we know that men are very physical creatures, right? I don't know if I can really use the word sexual, okay? We know that men are very sexual creatures. So the spirit of lust is something that is wreaking havoc over men right now. Men are willing to do any and everything to sleep with any and everything these days. So that right there is a spirit, that is an energy. Oftentimes, where that energy is produced from, it is ancestral. It is something that is trailing through the bloodline. But not only is it trailing through the bloodline, it is something that this society, that patriarchy, is accepting and they're condoning. They are encouraging men to continue to be little lustful dust buckets. If you don't want your son to follow down that same path, then a part of your protection work should be around that as well. There should be some workings that is specifically gearing toward him having things like self-discipline, self-control, emotional regulation, those type of characteristics that will help him to not only keep it under control as he is growing and maturing and he's seeing all the girls with the big booties. You want to make sure that your protection work is governing and covering him in that area to have that level of self-control, but then to also have the awareness to select the right type of partner. These are things that you can start doing clear from when they are little. If you want to ensure that your son stays like out of the system and things like that, we know practically speaking that yes, keeping him in sports, keeping him engaged in activities that will stimulate his mind, keeping him educated, those things are going to be important. Don't let him just sit in front of a video game. Video games are awesome. They're great for a distraction. My son loves a good video game. But what I've had to learn through trial and error is that the video games are also a part of this entire system to keep them enslaved. So if you want to ensure that your son is not one that will be enslaved, and that is mentally and physically, your protection work can also include that. It should also include that his mind is being focused and stimulated on things that are righteous and things that are just. So get out there, matriarch, get out there, mama, and protect your son.